Hello, I am Jason Barron. This video is going to be about Slavic settlement in ancient England. And I'm going to read an excerpt from this book by Thomas William Shore. It's called Origin of the Anglo-Saxon Race. I'm going to read parts of pages 86 and 87 to start out with. In Germany, east of the Elbe, no earlier inhabitants than the Slavonic have been discovered, excepting those of a very remote prehistoric age. At the dawn of German history, no traces are met with of enthralled people of Teutonic descent among the Slavs east of the Elbe. I don't know if that's Elbe or Elbe, I could be pronouncing it wrong. And there are no traditions of such earlier occupants, while the oldest place names are all Slavonic. If there were Germans, strictly so called, east of the river in the time of Tacitus, i.e., long-headed tribes, their assumed displacement by the Slavs between his time and that of Charlemagne would have been the greatest and most complete of any recorded in history. Ethnology and his history, therefore, alike point to people of Sarmatian or Slavic descent, i.e., brachycephalic tribes, as the earliest inhabitants of eastern Germany, and indicates some misunderstanding in this respect by the commentators of Tacitus. In eastern Germany, place names survive ending in itz, itz, so very common in Saxony, in zig, zig, as Leipzig, in a as Jena, and in Dam, D-A-M, as Potsdam. All these places were named by the Slavs. The statement of Bede that the Rugini or Rugians were among the nations from whom the English were known to have descended was contemporary evidence of his own time. The Rugi are also mentioned by Tacitus. Their name apparently remains to this day in that of Rugin Island, situated off the coast which they occupied in the time of the Roman Empire. As Ptolemy tells us of the Wenidae seated on this same Baltic coast, and as they were Sarmatians or Slavs, it is clear that the Rugians must have been of that race. Some of the nations mentioned by Tacitus were, he says, of non-Germanic origin. Rugin Island was the chief place of worship for the Wendish race, the chief center of their religion. On the east side of the peninsula of Jasmund and Rugin are the white chalk cliffs of Stubenkammer, and on the north side of the island is the promontory of Arcona, where in the 12th century we read of the idol Svantovit and the temple of this Wendish god. No traces of Teutonic worship have ever been found in Rugin. They are all Slavonic. Saxo tells us of the worship of Svantovit at Arcona, with the tributes brought there from all Slavonia. The probability of some very early settlers in Britain having been Wends, and consequently that there was a Slavic element in the origin of the Old English race, is shown in another way. The settlement of large bodies of Vandals in Britain by order of the Emperor Probus is a fact recorded in Roman history. The authority is Zosimus, and this settlement is said to have taken place in the latter part of the 3rd century of our era after a great defeat of Vandals near the Lower Rhine. They were accompanied by a horde of Burgundians, and as they were apparently on the march in search of new homes, it probably suited them as well as it suited the Romans to be transported to Britain. unless it can be shown that the Vandal name is to be understood to mean only certain tribes of Teutonic origin. This arbitrary settlement of Vandals in Britain is the earliest record of immigrants of Slavic origin. It is not possible to ascertain the parts of the country in which they settled, but as they were known to Roman writers by the names Vinidae and Venedi, it is possible that the Roman place names in Britain, Vindagladia in Dorset, Vendomus in Hampshire, and others may have been connected with their settlements. Okay, now to page 104. Okay, first we have the evidence that Wends were among the settlers either during the early period or later in alliance with the Danes. The Wends, specifically so called by the Germans, included some tribes much darker than the Saxons and Angles, as the remnant of the race still called Wends living on the border of Saxony and Prussia at the present time shows. They are the darkest people in northern Germany, according to the official census. From 26 to 29% of the children of the Wendish district of Lusatia, south of Dresden, were shown by this census to be brunettes. Notwithstanding the admixture of race with the much fairer people of Teutonic descent, which has been going on along this borderland since the dawn of history. All the Slav nations are not dark. Some are as fair as the Scandinavians, while others, such as the Wends and the Czechs of Bohemia, are dark. The Wendish place names in Buckinghamshire and on its borders help to show that some people of this race probably settled in that county. Huntingdon tells us that during the later Saxon period, they formed part of the Scandian hosts. They were in alliance with the Norwegians, Danes, Swedes, Goths, and Frisians, or in any case, people of these races were acting together in the Danish expeditions against England. It is likely, therefore, that when permanent settlements were formed, adjoining townships would be occupied by people of this alliance. This consideration helps us to identify Wendelsbury in Hertfordshire, Wendover and its neighborhood in Buckinghamshire, the Anglo-Saxon Wendofra and Windsor, anciently Wendelscore, close to the southern border of that county, were probably named after settlers who were Wends. Okay. Yeah, that's the gist of it. Um, so basically, the people of England descend from all over Europe, but that still, that makes them European. Europe plus Europe equals Europe. So the native English are 100% European. Their predominant ancestry is from Angles and Saxons, although I'm sure there's Norman influence as well, especially considering that when the Normans invaded England, both the Normans and the Anglo-Saxons were both white and Roman Catholic, so there was no religious barriers to marriage, and there was no racial barriers to marriage because they were both white and Roman Catholic. They had the same race and religion. So I'm sure that the Normans and the Anglo-Saxons intermarried because of that reason. There was very little difference between them, except for what could be referred to as an ethnic difference. The Normans were like Nordic French, and the Anglo-Saxons were Germanic English. But again, they're both very similar. They're both European. They're both white, and their religion was the same, Roman Catholic. So there wouldn't have been much barriers to prevent them from marrying. So yeah, I'm Jason Barron. Have a wonderful day. I hope you found this video educational, and I shall talk to you again soon.